Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel and thank you so much for joining me on this series where I will be reading, editing, and dissecting the different personal statements that I wrote when I was applying to medical school. If you're just joining us in this series, I will leave a link to the full playlist in one of the top hand corners so that you can check that out if that will be helpful for your own application. In this video, I'll be breaking down the essay that I wrote about my research experience as an undergraduate student prior to applying to medical school. Make sure you guys stick around till the end where I pull on different themes and principles that you might be able to apply to your own writing, even if you might not have these same experiences as me. Everyone makes the mistake of running their gel the wrong way, said my lab manager. Ironically, that was probably the only error I did not make. The only true mistake is the unidentified one, destined to be repeated. If you're wondering, I probably made that one too. However, I'm not suggesting that my summer consisted of only producing uninterpretable data, rather that my transition from early inexperience to proficiency instilled in me a strong sense of resilience. Though I was grateful to have a research opportunity, I knew my contributions to science were merely a grain of sand in the desert, but I wanted to know that grain inside and out. I dove into the lab, vigorously searching for answers, but found only questions. Although I believed pertinent questions were essential to learning, I was unsure how and where to find answers. This is where my lab mates, who never gave me the answers but showed me how to obtain them, enriched my skill set. For example, they taught me how to read a paper with a critical eye and objectively evaluate the results. I believe these skills are invaluable in medicine, but I also appreciate the role that collaboration plays in their development. Although an intuitive understanding of research only comes with years of experience, this past summer has taught me that as long as I acknowledge my faults, I put myself in a learning position. Alright everyone, so now I'm going to get into the part of the video where I actually edit the essays that I wrote if I were reapplying to medical school, given the sort of knowledge about the culture and values of medicine that I now have as a third-year resident. Again, if you'd like either myself or one of my consultants to help review your essays for medical school, we'd be more than happy to help. Just head on over to canadianpremed.ca and you can learn all about our services there. We'd love to have a chat with you. So if you guys have been following along with this series, you'll know that I have said this many times over, but again, there are minimal edits to actually be made because obviously these essays were polished many times over prior to me actually submitting them. That being said, there are a couple of changes that I would make, and we'll go through them right now. So the first change I made is I deleted this line about my transition from early experience to proficiency, and I just replaced it with my time in the lab. The reason I did that is because now as a resident, having done a bit more research, I understand that it's actually very unlikely that any undergraduate student is proficient in research, and so I never want to come across as somebody that knows it all or doesn't have anything else to learn, or somebody that's just overly pompous and overestimates their abilities, because anytime there's sort of that overconfident medical student or resident, that's actually when attendings get scared because they're like, oh my goodness, this guy doesn't know what he doesn't know. And so I just changed that from the transition from early experience to my time in the lab to make it a bit more of a neutral statement. The other thing you'll see me do in this sentence is I changed it from saying rather my time in the lab instilled in me a strong sense of resilience. I changed that to include both a strong sense of resilience and an appreciation for the role that mistakes play in the learning process. And obviously we'll get into sort of why I chose to include that in the introduction in the next part of the video where I sort of dissect the principles that I'm pulling on to craft this piece of writing. The last thing I changed, obviously, at the end is sort of just to make it very clear that instead of just saying this past summer has taught me that as long as I acknowledge my faults, I put myself in a learning position, I just want to make it abundantly clear that as long as I acknowledge my faults and seek to correct them, I put myself in a learning position. I think that's just a bit more of a holistic, rounded statement that, you know, demonstrates that there has to be a willingness on the part of the person that made that mistake in order to learn from that. And, you know, I'm hoping that's what I was able to convey through that modification. So obviously now, guys, I'm going to break down this essay and pull out some principles and themes that you might be able to apply to your own writing. For simplicity's sake, I broke it down into this green paragraph over here and the rest of the essay, which is highlighted in blue. And that's just to help you guys keep track of my thought process. So what am I doing with this green introduction paragraph? Obviously, I'm using humor. I'm making it personal. And what I'm hoping to do here is to obviously hook the reader by making a couple of self-deprecating jokes. Now, you have to be careful with humor because you don't want to overdo it. This is still a professional essay that you're writing for medical school. But I just find that if you're able to tell a bit of a story and maybe make someone laugh, that might actually get their attention to want to read more because you are standing out from the rest of the crowd that is potentially very monotone and boring in their writing. So that's what I'm trying to do here with the humor. You have to be careful, obviously, not to overdo it because it is a personal essay for medical school. But that being said, you know, going for a couple of light jokes in a select few of your essays, probably not all of them, will definitely be helpful to help keep the reader engaged at the other side of the table. So then I obviously talk a lot about mistakes and learning in this essay. And I think that's really important actually for the practice of medicine because, as you guys may know, when you're signing up to be a doctor, you're essentially signing up to be a lifelong learner. Oh, sorry, there's that's the neighbor's dog going. I think there can be this perception as a pre-medical student especially that mistakes are a bad thing. And yes, we 100% do our best to avoid and prevent mistakes as medical professionals. But that being said, mistakes are actually a normal part of any learning process. One of my professors actually told me when I was in medical school, they told the whole class that 50% of the medical knowledge that we graduate with at the time of graduation is going to be found to be incorrect or outdated based on new science within the next 10 years. So not only are we learning from mistakes at the individual level as individual doctors, but we're also learning as an entire scientific community together. So that is certainly a theme that I wanted to pull on from this essay, that it's okay to make mistakes as long as you're doing your best to avoid and prevent them in the practice of medicine. And certainly as an undergrad, as long as you are putting yourself in a position to learn from those mistakes. The other story I want to share with you guys about mistakes is, you know, as a medical student, we are often encouraged to give our potential management or treatment plan, not directly to the patient, but to present it to the attending physician. And even though it may be completely incorrect or missing elements, I think we're encouraged to do that because then we're able to correct our thinking with the feedback that we get from our supervisors and our attending physicians. You guys might know about the CanMed's medical expert role, the one in the center of the flower, the integrating role or whatever they call it. And obviously no one expects pre-medical students to be medical experts, but we do need to see that you guys have the hard and soft skills that are necessary to eventually one day become a medical expert. And part of that is receiving criticism that is negative and constructive, and part of that is learning from your mistakes and demonstrating an ability to do so. So that's what I would say for this essay. I think that's why it potentially works. Well, it got me an interview at least. So hopefully you guys are able to pull on some of those principles when you're crafting your own. So again, guys, thank you so much for joining me on this series. If you'd like to check out the other videos, I'll leave a link to the full playlist in one of the top hand corners. And as always, if you guys are interested in having either myself or one of my consultants help review your essays for medical school, we'd be more than happy to do so. Just head on over to canadianpremed.ca and we'd love to have a chat with you. That's all for now, guys. Happy writing. Take care.